Okay, hello. Is that better? Yes. Okay, so this is just a quick introduction to the meta-narrative of dwarfism, which is an edited book, which I'm sure David has mentioned quite a few times. So I wrote a chapter on it because, as you know, I'm Erin, and I have dwarfism. Okay, and I'm writing it from my perspective. So I'm both analysing certain representations of dwarfism and using autocritical discourse analysis, which is informed by autoethnography, to understand how these representations impact people with dwarfism in society. So I've shared some of my own experiences in here, because that is personal. It gives voice to disabled people, which is important, and it provides that real life experience. Okay, so because most people, they will see these representations of dwarfism and think nothing of them because they don't see the implications of them. Okay, so quickly, so dwarfism, it's a physical condition, usually genetic. In most cases, is genetic. There were cases which were hormonal, which resulted in people with a proportionate body size, and these were usually commonly referred to as midgets, although that's a very problematic term, which has no medical connotation. It was just a word that was developed and popularized in the freak shows, because they preferred to use people with proportionate dwarfism because people like to stare at them more. They were more of a spectacle rather than somebody with disproportionate dwarfism, which results in a different body size and shape. So I've got disproportionate dwarfism. I've got achondroplasia, so I have a very disproportionate body size and shape, which people would refer to as deformed. Now, if you want to get an idea of somebody with proportionate dwarfism, you could think of the Munchkins from Wizard of Oz. Now, because of medicine, um, people with hormonal dwarfism can be treated. So now dwarfism is mostly genetic. Okay, so it results in someone of profound short stature. Usually, it's a person no taller than 4'10" and has a medical condition. Um, I have to sort of, reinforce that idea medical condition, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I know what it's like to be a dwarf because I'm short," and it's like, okay, so how much did you pay for your pedal extensions on your car? And they'll go silent, and I'm like, you don't know what it's like to be a dwarf. Okay, there's some unique experiences for people with dwarfism. Okay, somebody who's just small is not going to get asked if they do panto. Somebody who's just small is not going to get midget shouted at them in the street, or Oompa Loompa, or go, oh my God, to their friends, I've just seen a real life dwarf. Yeah, that's happened. Okay, when I was getting served in Morrison's, and I left, and the woman who was at the counter ran up to this woman and goes, oh my God, you never guess, I've just seen a real life midget. This woman that she said it to actually happened to be my sister-in-law, because Bangor's quite a small place, and it's one of those places everyone knows everyone. And she goes, you mean Erin, Laura's sister? Oh, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, she doesn't like being called a midget. Oh, okay, well, she's so cute. I'm like, I mean, you lot have seen me in lectures. I'm not cute. I'm in my 30s. It ain't cute. Okay? Anyway, there are approximately 250,000 people with achondroplasia, the most common form of dwarfism, living worldwide. Okay? So 250,000 worldwide. I'm one of those 250,000. Now, this makes dwarfism a rare impairment. Okay, you are unlikely to just bump into a dwarf on the high street, or okay, you might bump into them on campus because you likely bumped into me, or maybe oh, there she is. Let's just go the other way. But it's rare. Okay, it's rarer than seeing somebody in a wheelchair. It's rarer than seeing someone from an ethnic minority, anything like that. What you've probably seen a lot of dwarfs in is the media, and the media can get to a wide audience. Okay, it's projected, films, TV, magazines, all sorts, fairy tales, and so many dwarfs are featured in this because there's this cultural fascination with dwarfism. So as I say in the meta-narrative, people with dwarfism are rarely seen in society but are prominent within the entertainment industry. I mean, there are places where you can hire dwarfs out for your stag do. Okay, you can hire them out for your hen night. Please don't do that. But and this is acceptable because we are not so much a disability. We're not disabled people. We are more of a novelty. That's the overarching stereotype of dwarfism. We are the novelty that you can hire out, you can laugh at, you can be entertained by. And you wouldn't really do that with any other impairment, would you? Okay, so just to go back, I'm talking about there's 3 meta-narratives. Okay, there's 3 overarching stereotypes, tropes associated with dwarfism, which form the meta-narrative: humor, asexuality or sexuality, and childlike. But they are all underpinned by heightism and heightist constructions. So the first one I want to focus on is this terminology that bigger is better. Now, heightism is a discrimination towards people, usually those who are short, but can also refer to someone who's very, very, very tall, like somebody with gigantism. But it's usually a thing that in society, we all think bigger is better. Okay, so studies are showing that if you've got 2 presidential candidates in America, the taller one is likely to win. Unfortunately, Donald Trump was taller than Hillary. Okay, if he'd been a dwarf, he wouldn't have won. Well, there again, if he'd just been born to a working class family, as opposed to a millionaire, he wouldn't have won. But the thing is, we always see tall as good. Okay, you always want a tall child, don't you? When you're pregnant, when you have a kid, it's always measured. They want to measure how tall it is. How long is it going to be? If it's small, then there's something wrong with it. Okay, so tallness is always revered in society. So, for example, you walk tall, you hold your head up high. Whereas if you're small-minded, you're small fry, these kind of things. So bigger is better. We always look up to someone, but if we disrespect them, we look down upon them. Okay, so I've got 2 book covers here. The first one is Walking Tall by Clay Rivers. It's a memoir about being small, and as you can see, Clay has dwarfism, and yet he's walking tall. Oh no, you can't walk tall. And then on the right side of the screen, we have In Our Hearts We're Giants, which shows a sepia picture of 7 people. Yeah, 7 people with dwarfism. They are in Auschwitz. These are the Ovitz family. And as you can see, there's several people standing behind them of all of average stature looking at them. And the camera is purposely pointed to this Ovitz family. So these were people with dwarfism who were medically experimented on during the Holocaust. Okay, most dwarfs were just killed during the Holocaust, but these 7 pose something great with genetics, because how can you get that many in a family? Okay, usually people dwarfism, it's just 1 in the family. Now this is written by 2 average sized people, but this title again, In Our Hearts We're Giants. Yeah, they've done something magnificent, so they're giants. Okay, metaphorically, they're giants. This Clay Rivers has got something to celebrate, so he's walking tall. He's to be respected. Okay, but the thing is, you don't walk tall, do you? If you're a dwarf, you're always going to be small, and you're not a giant. But to be good, you must have these things. So, for example, I put into Google, I said walking tall and dwarf, and I came up with this headline. Well, this headline was presented to me: Rico walking tall after winning at the dwarf games. So there was a guy with dwarf. Well, he was a kid with dwarfism, and he'd won at some sporting events for people with dwarfism. So now he's walking tall because he's got something to be proud of. Okay, so it implies it's this very heightist assumption that taller is better, and it's reinforced through the language we used. Okay. Now, the second meta-narrative associated with, second stereotype which informs meta-narrative is humor. Okay, now this is probably the most prominent one. Okay, dwarfs are always something you can laugh at. Now, to be laughed at means you are inferior. Okay, so it links this superiority theory of humor, where we laugh at something when they do, when someone says something stupid, like if you watch You've Been Framed, you laugh at people there. Okay, you laugh at silly jokes that makes no sense. So we laugh at dwarfs because we feel better than them. Okay, and they're always doing something stupid, aren't they? So let's think of some humorous representations of dwarfism. You've got Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. They were based on freak show dwarfs. You've got pantomime dwarfs, which were informed by the Disney dwarfs. So, you always wear colourful costumes, you act childish, and so you're funny. Okay, so there's Mini-Me from Austin Powers, the ability to hire out dwarves for a stag do and watch them run around the tables is funny because you're watching this little person and you are better than that little person because they are no threat to you. Okay, because in prehistoric times when we were like Neanderthals or something or whatever, I'm not good at that. We were in clans, we were in tribes, and so we would laugh if something was non-threatening, because then that would give this message to the other people in your family or connection or clan that what you'd spotted was non-threatening. So if you saw a saber-toothed tiger, you wouldn't laugh, would you? You'd run. But if you saw something like just a little possum or whatever, you would laugh at it because it's not threatening. And that was indicating to everybody else it was non-threatening. So we still have people that have this sort of caveman mentality, and you can usually see that on a Saturday night in Coyote Ugly or something, where we laugh at the non-threatening dwarf, and we laugh because he's doing something stupid. Okay, and it's usually a male dwarf, and I'm not being sexist here or something, but it was pointed out to me by a woman with dwarfism. It's mostly men that lie themselves out, and you do notice that because they're still trying to be part of the group. They're still trying to be one of the lads, and it's quite sad, really, because they're only being hired out to be laughed at, not to be a friend. Anyway, this has social implications. So the association between height and humour has problematic implications for how people with dwarfism are perceived and treated within society. So I'm speaking from my own experiences here. I'm not only assumed to be an entertainer, but also to be a figure of fun who is acceptable to mock like a typical dwarf entertainer. So they see a dwarf entertainer, that's all they've ever seen, and then they see me, and because I'm the same height as them, I must be an entertainer. So this mockery is a form of heightism that keeps people with dwarfism within an inferior position or place within society. Now, if I do not play along, I challenge a stereotypical perception of a dwarf, which results in me being labelled the angry dwarf. I have no sense of humour. However, I am just a person who, like anyone else, does not enjoy being mocked by others. So if you're walking down the street and someone starts pointing and laughing at you, starts taking a photo of you, calls you a midget or mini-me, what are you meant to do? Go, oh yeah, that's so funny. Or do you swear at them? I always do the latter, because I'm here to sort of say we're all equal. I'm not inferior to you. So I'm going to show you that. I don't do it in an academic way when I'm outside. But this is the thing. The ethics there is then, are these dwarf entertainers creating this problematic stereotype? Because whilst, this meta-narrative of dwarfism has been created by average-sized people, it is reinforced by dwarf entertainers who say, I love it, I'm okay with it, and if I'm okay with it, then it's nobody else's business. Well, it is the business of those that are impacted by it. So we can look at a few stereotypes of human dwarfism, such as Snow White, where we laugh at the dwarfs. You can laugh at Mini-Me because he's 1/8 the size of Dr. Evil, and as his name suggests, he is small because he's mini. So we laugh at him, we pick him up, we throw him across the room. And there's this notion of childishness because he dresses up as a baby. And so you've got this man who is dressed as a baby. It creates this incongruous encounter, okay? But you always mock the dwarfs. And yes, I have been asked if I do entertainment. I've been asked if I'm in a panto. I've been asked to dress up as Hello Kitty. It's just things that happen to you when you're out. The second sort of stereotype is sexuality. Now, people with dwarfism, like a lot of disabled people, are deemed asexual. And this links to eugenics, doesn't it? Because disabled people shouldn't breed. So there's this forbidden relationship, which is a dwarf dating an average sized person. Now, I've always dated average sized men. Okay, it's just, well, you're not going to get much else because I don't know any of dwarfs, do I? But people see that as odd, and I'll get strange looks. And I remember dating one guy who was like, oh yeah, my friends find it funny that I'm dating a dwarf. And so I told him where to go, obviously. Now, I don't know if it's funny because of the difference in height, or if it's funny because they must have thought that I was a panto dwarf. But, imagine if your friend said, oh, I find it funny that you're dating, someone who's the same sex as you, or I find it funny you dating someone who's a different ethnicity, or I find it funny that you're dating someone who sits in a wheelchair. They would be seen as really bad people. but it was funny that he was dating a dwarf. So it's really seen as this unforbidden relationship and the forbidden relationships. The forbidden relationship, which is spoken about, is a disabled person dating a non-disabled person. The unforbidden relationship is if two disabled people date each other. So you think of the undateables. So if I date another dwarf, that's seen as unforbidden relationship. Okay. It's seen as acceptable, and not just by non-disabled people, but also by people with dwarfism themselves. So that's something I've written about, is how men with dwarfism think that if a woman's got dwarfism, then they're automatically going to date him. It's like, no. And that's nothing to do with dwarfism, but some of these men are awful. But here we have the American comedian and presenter Chelsea Handler, and I use comedian in a very, liberal sense because she's not that funny. When asked on a talk show if she would ever sleep with a person with dwarfism, she responded, no, as that would be child abuse. Okay, I mean, if the dwarf is under 18, yeah, it would be child abuse. But over 18, no, that's just stupid. So she automatically thinks that if you're the size of a child, then you must be a child. I mean, she's got the brain of a child. It's not abuse if you sleep with her. Well, maybe it is. So this absurd comment is unsurprising, since Chelsea went on further to say, I love little people. I want to tackle them. Yeah, she literally wants to tackle them in public. I see them and I want to hold myself down. I mean, I want to hold yourself down. I want to knock you to the floor. So I bite Chewy Bravo sometimes. Now, Chewy Bravo was a dwarf that she sort of kept as a pet. He was a middle-aged Mexican man, okay? But she used to get him to dress up for her and stuff, which is really creepy. Because Chelsea Handler, like I say, is this presenter, comedian, and that was sort of her sidekick. He's dead now. So I don't have much sympathy. But this is the way she treated dwarfs. And so if he's acting like that, then we must all be like that. So she wants to tackle us and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, come on, I'll do it. I've got my boxing gloves. Let's do it. But she's making this absurd comment that if you sleep with a dwarf, you're sleeping with a child. I mean, my exes, some of them are bad, but none of them are pedophiles. So there's this problematic assumption here. Now, to conclude, that bullet point there is getting on my nerves. Okay, the social experiences of people with dwarfism are influenced by the meta-narrative of dwarfism. Okay, the meta-narrative of dwarfism is influenced by heightism, and the cultural representations of dwarfism construct a problematic perception of people with dwarfism. We are seen as, asexual, we are seen as humorous, we are seen as only good for working in entertainment. I mean, it was, there's an agency that hires people with dwarfism called Willow Management, and one of the agents, they were casting, as it says in my book, well, my chapter, sorry, that they were casting average-sized people to play the role of the seven dwarfs. Now, I believe that's wrong because it's cripping up, but I believe in that whole representation is wrong. But they said, well, it's bread and butter for people with dwarfism. They'll be out of a job otherwise. It's like, no, we won't. Okay? I'm not going to be out of a job if they get rid of the panto. Okay? I'm only going to be out of a job if they got rid of this university. Do you know what I mean? But this is an assumption. Whereas actually, the people that would be out of the job are the people running that agency because they would have no more dwarfs to hire out. But that's another story. Okay. Now, if that hasn't bored you completely, you can contact me. Where's my email? Yeah, so pretty@hope.ac.uk. Yeah, thank you.